Rick jolted awake, gasping for air, his chest heaving as the nightmare's grip loosened. Sweat dripped down his face, the echoes of Betryal's scream still ringing in his ears. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, staring at the photo of her in his mind. Her smiling face was a cruel reminder of what he'd lost, and what the shadows kept taking from him each night. "Betryal," he whispered, his voice breaking. The cold floor beneath his feet grounded him, but the ache in his chest refused to fade. This wasn't just a dream. He knew it. Rick shot up in bed, his breath coming in panicked gasps. The nightmare clung to him like a suffocating fog. Trembling, he swung his legs over the edge and stood, the cold floor grounding him for a moment. His heart still raced as he stumbled toward the bathroom, every step heavy with dread. The hallway seemed darker than usual, the shadows stretching unnaturally. He reached the bathroom door, hesitated for a beat, and then pushed it open, the creak of the hinges making him jump. Rick stepped into the bathroom, his pulse still racing. He locked the door behind him, seeking the solitude of the small space. The room felt cold, the air thick with the remnants of his nightmare. He moved to the bathtub, hesitating for a moment before stepping in and turning on the hot water. The sound of the water filling the tub was oddly comforting. As the steam rose, he grabbed a book, a worn, leather-bound volume he'd often read to distract himself from the dark thoughts. He opened it to a random page, but his eyes kept wandering. The words blurred, his mind far from the pages. Rick looked around, his gaze lingering on the shadows in the corners of the room. The mirror, the darkened space behind the shower curtain, everything felt off, like something was waiting, hidden just out of sight. He shook his head, trying to focus on the book. But the eerie feeling wouldn't go away. Rick stepped into the closet, his movements quick and precise. He reached for a cream-colored dress, soft and elegant, a style Betryal had often admired. It was a dress Rick had never expected to wear, but the need to move forward, to escape the weight of his nightmares, pushed him to make the choice. As he slid the dress on, the fabric felt smooth against his skin, but an uneasy shiver crawled up his spine. The room around him felt colder, more distant, as if the shadows were closing in. He adjusted the dress, smoothing out the wrinkles, trying to focus. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a weight he couldn't shake. He glanced around the closet, but it was empty, the soft light from the window casting a faint glow on the neatly hung clothes. With a deep breath, Rick forced himself to look away from the shadows, finishing his dressing and bracing himself for whatever came next. He reached the elevator, he pressed the button and waited, elevator open with a soft hiss. His mind raced, not with the unease of the night, but with thoughts of his upcoming meeting with Mayor Nazer. The mayor was a man of influence, well-connected and often seen as a barrier to Rick's plans. Their meeting was crucial, but Rick wasn't sure if he could trust him. Rick stepped out of the building, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The streets were still quiet, the soft hum of early morning life just beginning to stir around him. He decided to walk to Mayor Nazer's manor, the path taking him through the heart of the city, a route he'd always found oddly calming. The cobblestone streets were lined with bushes, their leaves a deep shade of green, offering shade from the rising sun. The scent of blooming flowers drifted through the air, mingling with the distant sound of birdsong. It was a beautiful path, almost serene, but Rick couldn't shake the tension that had been gnawing at him since the nightmare. As he walked, he passed elegant townhouses with ivy-clad walls, the city's charm on full display. The architecture was a blend of old-world grandeur and modern elegance, a constant reminder of the power and wealth that flowed through the city. Rick's thoughts returned to Mayor Nazer. The man was a master of diplomacy, but Rick had learned long ago not to trust appearances. He had to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. The manor came into view, a grand estate at the end of the path, its wrought iron gates rising like a fortress. It was imposing, yes, but also undeniably beautiful. Rick straightened his shoulders as he approached the entrance, ready to face whatever awaited inside. Mayor Nazer's royal manor stood like a testament to old-world grandeur, its imposing presence commanding respect from anyone who approached. Located at the end of a long, tree-lined avenue, the manor was a stunning blend of classical architecture and refined elegance. The exterior was constructed from pale limestone, intricately carved with ornate patterns and detailed sculptures that spoke of a bygone era. Large columns flanked the entrance, supporting a sweeping portico that led up to massive double doors made of dark oak, their surfaces embossed with royal insignia. The windows, tall and arched, were framed with elaborate wrought iron, their glass catching the light and reflecting the manicured gardens that surrounded the estate. Beyond the gates, a long, winding driveway stretched up to the manor, bordered by neatly trimmed hedges and towering, sculpted topiaries. The vast grounds were meticulously maintained, with flowers strategically placed in the front gardens, their waters sparkling in the sunlight. The rear of the manor opened up to a grand courtyard, a large stone terrace overlooking sprawling gardens, where exotic flowers bloomed in vibrant hues, adding to the serene, almost dreamlike atmosphere of the estate. The royal manor was not just a house, it was a symbol of power, wealth, and history, and anyone who walked through its gates would feel the weight of its legacy. It was here that Rick would face Mayor Nazer, and the atmosphere of the manor seemed to carry a silent promise that nothing was ever truly what it seemed inside its walls. Nazer standing at the entrance, his posture regal yet welcoming. Beside him was a tall, dark figure, a demon, its silhouette almost blending with the shadows, its red eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. Nazer, dressed in his usual refined attire, smiled warmly at Rick, his face full of charm and authority. "Ah, Rick, I'm so glad you could join me today," he said, his voice rich and inviting, as if they were old friends. "It's been too long." The demon beside him stood still, watching with an air of quiet intensity, but its gaze never wavered from Rick. Without hesitation, Nazer stepped forward, his arms wide open, a gesture that was unexpected but undeniably genuine. "Welcome," he said, and before Rick could respond, the mayor wrapped him in a firm, yet surprisingly warm hug. Rick stiffened for a brief moment, taken aback by the sudden closeness, but Nazer's embrace was oddly comforting, like a gesture that came from someone who had seen much and understood more. The mayor's embrace held a strange weight, one that seemed to remind Rick of the delicate balance between power and trust. "Let's not stand out here," Nazer said, stepping back with a smile. "Come in, Rick. There's much to discuss." He motioned for Rick to follow, his eyes gleaming with an unreadable expression, while the demon silently moved aside, giving them space. Nazer guided Rick through the serene garden, the path winding gently between rows of blooming flowers and neatly trimmed hedges. The sunlight filtered through the canopy of trees above, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The air was filled with the soft scent of roses and jasmine, but Rick's mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of his warrior outfit. As they walked behind Nazer, Rick's gaze shifted to the elegant garden benches and seating areas that dotted the landscape. They were beautiful, sure, but the peaceful surroundings only made him more aware of the contrast to the raw power he had come to rely on, the strength and security his warrior outfit provided. The armor, hidden beneath his clothes, was a part of him. A heavy reminder of the battles he had fought and the people he had protected. He thought of the sturdy chest plate, the sharp, flexible armor that had shielded him from countless dangers. The gauntlets, strong and unyielding. The boots, always ready for a swift pursuit. He was used to wearing that suit, a silent shield that gave him confidence in any situation. The thought of facing Nazer in the garden, in this moment of apparent peace, made him feel vulnerable, unprepared. As Nazer led him further, they reached a secluded part of the garden where a royal white sitting area awaited them. It was an exquisite spot, unlike anything Rick had seen before, a circular arrangement of white marble benches, each one decorated with elegant carvings. In the center was a low, round table, the surface of which reflected the soft light like polished glass. White roses grew around the perimeter, their petals delicate and pristine. Nazer motioned for Rick to take a seat. As Rick hesitated, his thoughts remained on his warrior outfit, the comfort it gave him in moments of uncertainty. He couldn't help but feel that in this place, surrounded by beauty and calm, his armor seemed unnecessary. But he also knew that in this world of shifting alliances and hidden dangers, it was always better to be prepared. Nazer leaned forward, his voice calm but serious.
"I assume you're wondering why I brought you here, Rick. It's about the Golden Desert."
Rick's expression hardened.
"The Golden Desert? What do you know about it?"
Nazer's gaze sharpened.
It's not just a wasteland. It holds something powerful, something that could change everything. But not everyone is strong enough to face what's hidden there.
Rick raised an eyebrow.
"And you want me to go there? Why me?"
Because you're the only one who has the strength and the will to survive what's out there. I need your help to uncover its secrets.
"What's the catch? Why not send your own men?"
Because you've proven yourself. You're not afraid of the truth, even if it's more dangerous than you can imagine.
"All right, I'll go. But I'm not doing this for you. I want answers. We'll both get what we need, Rick. But remember, survival is key. And that's something neither of us can take lightly. All right, I'll go. But I'm not doing this for you. I want answers."
As Rick sat, A sudden movement behind him caught his attention. The demon darted toward him and tried to sit in the chair in front of him, but its landing was awkward. It yelped in discomfort, quickly jumping up and glaring at the chair. With a frustrated huff, the demon moved to the other side and sat down across from Rick, its posture more controlled now. Rick smirked.
Nice landing.
The demon shot him a quick glare but remained silent. Nazer chuckled softly.
Don't mind him. He's a bit eager. We'll get used to each other in time. Listen carefully. Rick is the one who will lead you through the Golden Desert. Your role is to protect him, guide him when necessary, and ensure nothing hinders his progress. The desert is treacherous. Don't underestimate what lies ahead. You'll face dangers both natural and supernatural. Stay by his side, but don't interfere with his decisions. He must trust you, but he must also feel in control. If he commands you to act, do so. If he chooses to face something alone, respect that. Your mission is to ensure he survives, no matter the cost. Understand? The demon gave a slow, deliberate nod, acknowledging Nazer's instructions. She remained silent, her red eyes unwavering as she stood in attention. Rick, now standing, adjusted his stance, ready for the journey ahead. His eyes were focused, his mind set on the challenge of the Golden Desert. The weight of his warrior spirit seemed to sharpen with each passing moment. Nazer stood as well, a look of quiet respect on his face. He gave a slight nod to Rick, acknowledging his readiness without words. A silent but powerful gesture, signaling both the gravity of the journey and his admiration for the man who would face it.
Nazer watched Rick prepare for the journey, his expression shifting with a mix of respect and determination. As Rick stood tall, his movements deliberate and confident. He placed a fighting horse, a silent gesture of respect and solidarity, before nodding toward Rick, his eyes gleaming with quiet admiration. With a deep, steady breath, he stepped forward, the faintest of smiles touching his lips. He gestured with an open hand, an unspoken farewell mixed with a sense of pride in Rick's resolve. In the silence of the garden, his movements spoke volumes, an acknowledgement of the journey ahead and the strength Rick would need to face it.
Rick, I know the weight you carry, the pain, the nightmares that haunt you. I see it in the way you move, in the way your eyes carry a burden most would crumble under. But it's that very suffering that has forged the strength you now possess. I've watched you fight through it, never letting it break you. The desert will test that strength, but I have no doubt you'll endure, as you always have. And maybe, just maybe, the answers you seek are out there, waiting for you. The pain you carry, the nightmares you face, they don't define you, Rick. They forge you. Every scar, every sleepless night, has made you stronger, more resilient than any warrior I've known. The Golden Desert will test you, but it's nothing you can't overcome. Your strength isn't just in your fists, it's in your will to keep going, no matter the darkness. Trust that, and there's nothing in this world that can stop you.
Rick took a deep breath, and entered the Golden Desert using quick travel, feeling the weight of the desert air pressing down on him. The demon remained silent, her presence steady as she followed behind him, never speaking, just watching with unwavering focus. The stranger kept his distance, his cloak fluttering in the wind, his eyes scanning the vast, golden landscape ahead. The desert stretched endlessly before them, the sands shifting beneath their feet. With each step, Rick felt the gravity of the journey ahead settle deeper within him, but there was no turning back now. The silence was thick, only broken by the soft crunch of footsteps in the sand. Rick's voice finally broke the stillness. "We keep moving. There's something out here, and I'll find it." The demon nodded, her eyes locked on Rick, her resolve as unyielding as ever. As Rick and his companions continued through the Golden Desert, the silence was shattered by the distant, rhythmic crunch of boots on sand. Rick's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, spotting the silhouettes of mercenaries scattered across the dunes. They were moving in groups of 3 to 4, their weapons ready as they closed in on Rick. The first group of 3 approached from the left, weapons raised. With a flick of his wrist, Rick unleashed the flamethrower, the fire roaring to life. He aimed it directly at them, the intense flames sweeping over the group. The mercenaries screamed in terror as they were consumed by the fire, their bodies falling to the desert sands in a heap of scorched flesh. The second group, for mercenaries, attempted to flank him from the right, but Rick was ready. He swung the flamethrower around, sending another burst of fire toward them. The heat was overwhelming, and within seconds, they were reduced to burning husks, their weapons dropped uselessly as they tried to escape the flames. The third group, 5 mercenaries, tried to close in from behind, but they were too slow. Rick turned swiftly, unleashing a final blast of fire that swept over the group. The desert air shimmered with the intensity of the heat as they too fell, unable to outrun the flames. The last group, 5 mercenaries, hesitated, clearly intimidated by the destruction they'd witnessed. But Rick didn't wait for them to reconsider. With a calm, focused aim, he fired one more jet of flame, and the remaining mercenaries were consumed by the fire. The desert was quiet again. Rick lowered the flamethrower, the weapon sizzling as the flames died down. He glanced around at the ashes that remained of the mercenaries, the silence almost oppressive in the aftermath. "Let's keep moving," Rick muttered, his voice steady as ever, as he turned toward the path ahead. The demon, silent and unwavering, followed behind him, while the stranger, watching the devastation with a hint of respect, moved to join them. As Rick and his companions moved further into the golden desert, the air grew thick with tension. The sun blazed down relentlessly, but Rick's focus never wavered. Suddenly, a faint glint in the distance caught his eye. 6 mercenaries perched high on a sand dune, their sniper rifles aimed in their direction. They had set up a deadly ambush, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rick didn't flinch. He simply reached for his weapon, his movements smooth and deliberate. With a practiced hand, he pulled out his own sniper rifle, the one he carried for moments like these. Without a word, he took aim, his eyes narrowing as he lined up the first target. A deep breath, and then a quick squeeze of the trigger. The first mercenary's head exploded in a burst of red, dropping lifelessly to the sand below. The remaining 5 mercenaries scrambled, trying to reposition themselves, but Rick was already a step ahead. He shifted his aim, and with quick precision, he picked them off one by one, each headshot a clean, almost effortless execution. The desert air was briefly filled with the sound of each shot, each mercenary falling to the ground with no chance to retaliate. Within moments, all 6 snipers were dead, their bodies sprawled in the sand like discarded dolls. Rick lowered the rifle with a smirk, almost as if it had been no more than a game. "That was too easy," Rick muttered, the thrill of the shots still fresh in his mind. The demon said nothing, her eyes scanning the desert around them for any other threats. The stranger, who had been watching the entire scene, offered a low whistle of approval, though he didn't speak. Rick glanced back at them, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. "Let's keep moving. The real challenge is ahead." As Rick and his companions moved through the desert, 8 mercenaries appeared, weapons drawn. Without hesitation, Rick grabbed his flamethrower. He unleashed a torrent of fire, engulfing the first 3 mercenaries in an instant. The others scattered, but Rick was relentless, swinging the flames toward the next group. 4 more mercenaries screamed in vain before being consumed by the blaze. 2 tried to escape, but they too were caught in the flames, falling to the desert floor. Rick lowered the flamethrower, the air heavy with smoke. "That's the last of them," he muttered, continuing forward, unfazed by the destruction. 10 mercenaries with snipers and rifles appeared on the dunes, aiming at Rick. Calmly, he pulled out his own sniper rifle and took precise headshots, dropping 5 of them in seconds. As the remaining mercenaries scrambled, Rick switched to his flamethrower. With a swift motion, he unleashed a wave of fire, engulfing the others in flames. The remaining mercenaries had no time to react as they were consumed by the blaze. Within moments, the desert was silent again. Rick lowered his flamethrower, stepping forward without a word. "Let's move," he muttered, and the demon and stranger followed without question. 10 mercenaries, armed with snipers and rifles, emerged from the dunes. Rick wasted no time. He unleashed a burst from his flamethrower, incinerating the first sniper before he could fire. The others scrambled, but Rick's flames swept through them, reducing 5 to ash. In moments, the desert was still again. Rick lowered his weapons and began walking forward. "Let's keep moving," he said, and the demon and stranger followed, undisturbed by the chaos. As Rick, the demon, and the stranger ventured deeper into the golden desert, the atmosphere grew tense. The air shimmered with heat, but something felt off. An eerie silence settled over them. They suddenly stumbled upon a strange sight. A group of rough zombie-like creatures, their bodies decayed and twisted, stumbling aimlessly across the desert. Rick's hand instinctively went to his flamethrower, ready to deal with the threat. The rough hollow eyes turned toward the group, their movement jerky and unnatural. Without hesitation, Rick ignited the flamethrower, sending a wave of fire over the creatures, quickly reducing them to ash. But as the last of the rough crumbled to the ground, a low growl echoed from the shadows. From the depths of the desert, a massive creature emerged, its grotesque form towering over them. It was a monstrous boss creature, with a mutant, an armored hide, and glowing eyes filled with malice. Rick's eyes locked onto the beast. "This is it," he muttered. "Stay back." The creature charged, its roar shaking the sand beneath them. Rick stood firm, pulling out his weapon as he prepared for the final showdown. The demon and the stranger watched, ready to back him up, but it was clear this was Rick's battle to fight. The stranger, tense and ready, shifted his stance, preparing to strike. But the demon remained eerily still, her gaze locked on the creature with an unflinching focus. She said nothing, her presence almost ghostly as she waited, watching and listening to the battle unfold ahead. The creature screeched again, its muscles coiling as it took a threatening step closer, but the demon didn't move, her silence unwavering. It was clear she trusted Rick to handle the monster on his own, waiting for the right moment to act. As the massive ape-like creature charged forward, its roar echoing through the desert, Rick stood his ground, eyes narrowing. With swift precision, he reached for his assault rifle, AR, slung over his shoulder. He aimed carefully, his fingers steady on the trigger. The creature lunged, but Rick was faster. A burst of gunfire rang out, the rounds striking the creature's chest. The monster staggered, its massive form shuddering with each hit. Rick didn't hesitate. He fired again, his shots focused and calculated. The creature let out a final, guttural screech as it fell, crashing to the sand, lifeless. Rick lowered the rifle, the smoke rising from the barrel. His eyes scanned the surroundings, ensuring no other threats lurked nearby. The demon remained silent, still and watchful, while the stranger let out a quiet breath of relief. Rick nodded, hugged the demon. Another one down. "Let's move." And went to helicopter for leave Golden Desert. After the battle, Rick approached the demon, who remained as silent and still as ever. Without a word, he gestured toward a nearby bicycle, a sleek, sturdy model designed for the harsh desert terrain. "Time to move," Rick muttered, straddling the bicycle and waiting for the demon to join him. She silently climbed onto the back, her hands steady as she gripped the handlebars. The desert stretched out before them, the heat rising from the sand as they pedaled through the vast landscape, the sun beginning to dip low on the horizon. Rick focused ahead, his eyes scanning for any new threats as they made their way toward the helicopter, their destination for the camp. The wind whipped past them, the sound of the wheels on the sand the only noise in the desert as they sped toward the safety of their camp. The journey was quiet, but there was a sense of urgency in the air. Whatever lay ahead, Rick was ready to face it. The helicopter, their means of reaching camp, awaited them just beyond the horizon. After reaching the camp, Rick dismounted the bike, but before he could do anything else, the demon suddenly disappeared without a trace. Rick paused, scanning the area, but she was gone. He took a deep breath and turned. Rick made his way up the stairs to the camp, his eyes scanning the area. He paused by a large cage, its bars creaking in the wind. He studied it for a moment, noting the eerie emptiness inside. Without lingering, he continued toward the city hall, walking past the cage. Arriving at the front of the grand building, he sat down on a bench, his mind focused and calm, as he gazed toward the city hall, waiting for whatever came next. As Rick sat quietly on the bench, his mind was heavy with the weight of his past. The painful memories of his wife, Betryal, flooded his thoughts like a relentless tide. He remembered her smile, their shared moments of happiness, before everything changed. The haunting images of her face, twisted by anguish and fear, replayed in his mind like a never-ending nightmare. He recalled the times when her love seemed genuine, and the bond between them unbreakable. But that was before the darkness overtook her, before the nightmare of her transformation into something unrecognizable. The memories of her cruel actions, the times when she became a shadow of the person she once was, filled him with a cold bitterness. The nightmares, the endless suffering, always seemed to drag him back to those moments of loss and confusion. Tears threatened to well in Rick's eyes, but he pushed them back. His pain was a constant companion, and though he had learned to carry it, it never grew any lighter. The city hall loomed ahead, a reminder of the world he now had to face, but for a brief moment, Rick allowed himself to grieve. His thoughts also lingered on the mayor, Nazar, who had shown him respect and understanding, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Nazar, like everyone else, might not fully grasp the weight of his suffering. The memory of Betryal's torment, mixed with the struggles ahead, left Rick wondering if he'd ever truly escape the past.